Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to round one of season 2 of the AM Championship here on Simufur's YouTube channel. We are here in the heart of Europe at the Hungaroring, and it's going to look like it's going to be some fantastic racing. I am here today joined by Plasmaraider, who's just got off a 23-hour slog in iRacing to come and commentate with the AMs. But Plasma, thank you for joining me. It's looking, at least in the practice times, like we've got some big changes this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Coming off of the most recent GT3 season, we have a couple of promotions from the AM, most notably Skylar Vixen, who is a long-term member of the AM, finally getting a promotion up to silver. So now it's going to be the new bloods trying to prove themselves in the AM Championship, as well as some new members to the championship that are going to be trying to make a name for themselves inside of Simufur.
Yeah, one of those being this Mercedes here, the 21 of Chloe. One driver who's been trying to get some experience in ACC has come from the iRacing side and has decided to pick the Mercedes because it's something they have a little bit of experience with in iRacing, one of the few cars that we carry over. And yeah, like you said, some big shake-ups. I mean, from what people are fighting for this championship, to take the AM title, you'd have to take it off Grim Lilith, who not only went from AM, they got the experience, went from AM to silver, and now have ended up in pro.
Yeah, absolutely. And Grim was maybe a little bit of an exception as they proved their pace right away. But yeah, just a little bit, coming right off the bat and showing their pace in AM Champ. Granted, we had a couple other fast members that immediately went up with them, but I mean, going straight through the ranks in silver, taking the fight straight to Nate, and taking that title in the GT3 Season 4, I believe it was, moving up to Pro for any future seasons. So surely there's going to be drivers trying to ride off of their coattails. Maybe Wolfen jumping into the Mercedes here, the McLaren, jumping off of the Lamborghini ship, trying to jump onto the more established British team. But maybe we'll see how that goes for them. I know that they've been a lot happier in the Lamborghini, or a lot happier than in the Lamborghini. But if it transfers over to race pace, we will have to see, as they are going to be two drastically different cars, even though they both run that mid-engine format.
Yeah, well, Blue E this season all going for the McLaren. Apparently a bit of a hark back to what they used to run from when Blue E first joined. I think there's been a lot of chat. Suzuka was putting in some pictures on the Discord about how it's the same car but a different time frame, and someone pointed out between the screenshots you've gained one position. Thought that was kind of funny to point out. We also have the commentator from the last GT3 season, Snowdog, in the 555, just ahead in that AMG. He's taken his hand to come back to racing instead of being on this side of the microphone. Not entirely enjoying Hungaroring is Snowdog from what we've been experiencing before, but let's face it, having some fast lap times is only half of a race. We have seen what can happen, in the race pace and just what happens to people when they start to drop off. But I think, as all is said and done, it's going to be time to go to quali.
Yeah, absolutely. And coming into qualifying, I mean, you have plenty of experience in qualifying, especially here in the Simufur series. I think you have a nice record of poles, probably somewhat 50% pole rate. So any advice that you would get if any of these drivers either going out for the first time or just going out and trying to set that first impression lap to try to shake up the field?
Well, I think you might slightly overestimate my poles. I've had a few, but it's the most important thing I always found with any qualifying. A lot of people really want to push it on the out lap, on the first lap, because they want to get that good time on the board. It's cemented, and as much as then it is a nice feeling when you cross the line and a lot of other people cross behind you, as Seffi goes for a massive drift through I think that's turn 5 there. But you've got to break in these Pirellis slowly. The new tire models, after they updated many patches ago, they really can grain very, very rapidly, and when you do that, then you will really struggle for the rest of the session. You've got to break them in slowly, especially because today at Hungaroring it's not you know, blistering temperatures. I think it's 24, 26 it was in the free practice, so it's not what I would call hot. I wouldn't also call it freezing either, but it's going to be geek in the 007. I see what you did there, Mr. Bond, with his Aston Martin to take us round what will be the provisional pole lap.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, talking about the track characteristics right before we get onto a lap here, Hungaroring, a very front limited track. So you're going to see cars like the Aston Martin and Mercedes maybe struggling in that long run pace, speaking of tires. So possibly wearing through those fronts a little bit more. Could see the McLarens, the Lamborghinis, the Porsches at least try to make their mark early on. But we're jumping into the start of the lap here, and it's going to be Guy going deep into the brakes. He's picking up that apex quite nicely and getting it run down to turn 2. Downhill, very short, but it's important to get that exit because all of that momentum is going to be carrying you into turn 4, carrying through the exit here. And you're going to be setting up, getting far to the left-hand side to open up turn 3. It's a flat corner, but you can't take too much curb. Using all of the runoff there, you have to be careful that you don't cross all 4 wheels across the white line. That can be a track limits and ruin your qualifying lap. Maybe coming through turn 5, the uphill right, hugging the insides, all about getting the power early here for the short shoot into the chicane. Heading up for the chicane, using a little bit of that curb. You aren't braking very hard. Use all that entry curbing. Exit's going to unsettle the car a little bit. It looks like Geek's taking a little bit too much of that curbing, and he's going to be unsettled for the rest of the S's here. These S's, just like Suzuka, once you're off rhythm, you're going to be hurting the entire way through up until the straight after this right-hander. Hooks up that final apex nicely, recovers it. It's going to be the long double hairpins coming up here. 90 right, pretty straightforward, take a decent bit of curb, maybe a little bit conservative from Geek. And here the long hairpins, it's gonna just be hooking up that late apex, getting the best run you can. Ooh, a little bit of twitching from the Aston, still gets the power down nicely. Just blend in that power, balance the slip of the rear of the car. That's gonna be a lap from Geek. Our first time from qualifying is going to be a 1 minute 46.8. That's the bar to beat for the rest of the drivers.
Yeah, as you say, it's a very conservative lap. Seffi comes in behind in the Race Ventura Porsche, 2.2 seconds behind, but I think we saw a little bit of a twitch in there from the Porsche. One of the, in the Sam Champ as well, I believe Seffi is one of our controller drivers as well, so one to watch out for. And, you know, you can't really say anymore that a controller driver can't do anything, because Grim Lilith showed us that definitely can. And in fact, it took me all of my might to try and get past Grim Lilith at Laguna Seca in the M6, and it took me all of my might to get to the wall at Laguna Seca. But Chloe, our newcomer in the 21 Mercedes AMG, takes back the provisional pole with a 146.767. I'm watching to see where the Tig Gang Racing Ferraris come across the line, because they have been looking rapid all practice, but that not necessarily translates into qualifying. A lot of cars, but they obviously get better when you take all the fuel out. Some cars get worse.
Yeah, absolutely. One car that comes to mind for me is, it can be the BMW. It's a little bit hit or miss. It's a wonderful car in qualifying when you get it right. But if you take a race setup into qualifying with that car, you can end up actually losing all of your traction. And that can really cause you to struggle, especially think to those double hairpins, where those are all traction dependent corners. That can really hurt you. So it's going to be a little bit of a fine game if these drivers have either qualifying in a race setup, or if we're just running race setups with low fuel. It would be hard to tell. Have to ask the drivers about that one. So we see a little bit of a 2 wide as Denak goes onto the pole with a 1 minute 45.8, 7/10 clear of the field. I mean, that's just that Ferrari just being able to get in early. I know the front engine cars are going to need a little bit more time.
Yeah, and then speaking of cars that are getting a little bit more time, the front engine's Geeg improves to a 46.517, but Chloe responds once again, getting ever so closer now is the Mercedes 3/10 off Denak, but both of these cars looking very, very strong. JPEG-Fox briefly got into that podium position with the Porsche, has since been knocked off it, but like you said, the Porsches are definitely one to watch today. They're, a very nimble car. They dance around underfoot, and you can really, you can really do some something with them. Slowbird as well, electing... A lot of people have elected to take a new car for the AmChamp. Maybe they were in an old car for the main series. They've decided to see what it is like on the other side of the fence. But some people have gone for the old faithful. Slowbird picked the Jag in the main GT3 season, and they're back here again. P5 they improved to with a 146.9, and you can't really say that's too bad, considering that is still a Jaguar.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't teach an old dog new tricks, but it doesn't matter when the tricks that old dog is putting in is going to be competitive lap times. That's what is most important, as Jasper's going to be able to sneak into the top 5. 8/10 off, going to be in the 1 minute 46.6 mark. Going to be a little bit more time than he's going to be wanting, as Ruby's going to be sneaking in with 4 seconds to find. Ruby actually improving on their position from the GT3 season. That was mostly a learning season for them. Coming into this AmChamp, it's going to be a little bit more learning. I know that they're relatively new to trying to push the most out of the car. They were very excited getting their lap times. Very passionate driver. Getting a little bit more experience under their belt. So look forward to seeing what they can do throughout this championship.
Yeah, very much so, and the delta was very good up the top of the hill. Has bled off a little bit coming down, but you're still gaining a little bit more coming up to the line floors. The McLaren up, it's going to be a decent improvement, and it's P13, a 149.1 for the McLaren driver across the line, but we know that there's more time in that car over the hills, and as he says, it's just getting that confidence. So ACC is a game where really seat time is everything. A lot of people think that you need to jump in and immediately learn cars and setups and you know, really try and push it, but a lot of the time it's just seat time.
Yeah, absolutely. And many of these drivers switching to different cars are going to need that seat time, but drivers that haven't switched cars, it's going to be ZZ with the Old Faithful Porsche. Talked about Old Faithful and the Jag, but ZZ, I don't think I've ever seen him outside of that Porsche. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And he's going to be trying to squeeze that power on through the final 2 corners. Have it nice and deep, hook up a nice light apex to straighten up on power. He's going to hook that up quite nicely with the Porsche getting a good run out, that rear engine providing a little bit of extra traction as he's going to blip up to P13 on the timing tables. But most of these drivers are going to be coming in for their last lap here. 1 minute left in qualifying. This is going to be do or die. This is when you need to get those tires really up to pressure. They need to be perfectly in their window. Track is going to be at its best state. And that last couple of seconds, that's when you're always going to find that best time. Not just on the track, but mentally. You've spent the most time on track being able to prepare, and this is your do or die lap.
Well, not only that, but the more that you spend out on the track, we didn't really talk about it. We kind of mentioned about the weather. It's even colder than what I remember. It's 22, 23 out there on the track. But have you noticed, the track condition, it's still fast. It hasn't even ticked over to optimum yet. And sometimes that is, you know, people who are here on the track, the last sector, this is the best moment for them. They know they're going to get one more lap. You will have the most amount of grip, the most amount of rubber laid down onto that circuit, and sometimes that is where you find, you know, just that few tenths to really push yourself past the person that you're going. And Snowbird takes a wide line, tries to run out to the line just to get a little bit more speed, crosses the line, couple of seconds left to go, and the checkered flag comes down. So anyone who's on a flying lap, they will count, but it will be their last one, and the 89 will be our last to cross the wall.
Absolutely, the first one crossing that line. It's going to be randomly putting it P2, the 1 minute 49.9 or 45.9, and be followed up by Jasper, and I believe that's going. No, it's not going to be.
It was an improvement, but it was an improvement, but it wasn't a position change, but a lot closer to the to Geek in front. So you know, though, that in the race these two are going to be quite close. Azar with a big jump up to P6, a 146 gets him up into that 6th place, almost into the top 5.
And Chloe's going to be the next driver up that we have to try to cross the line. I think they're actually, yes, they're coming through the final corner, as well as Ruby trying to improve. Oh, and a lost rear going deep into the wall. Oh, no. Last thing Ruby wanted, certainly up on their lap time, pushing everything they could out of that car. It's going to be up to Neo trying to sneak up out of that P18 position. A little bit of damage to the front end of that BMW. Certainly not going to help the aero platform. Like they're being a little bit conservative, perhaps maybe not gelled with that car fully. Just trying to put the rest of this lap together. Yeah, a little bit squirrely on the rear of that BMW coming through the final two corners. A little bit wide, keeps the momentum though. Can make that run to the line, can make up the time by going a little bit wide. That's what that last corner will do, but it will not be an improvement for Neo. So there's going to be your top 21 of filing through the order.
And while we wait for the cars to get gridded up, bit of an interesting fact looking at the results of qualifying. You know, we mentioned between the mid engines and the front engines, and, you know, the mid, the fronts, and the rears, who's going to have the battles of the sectors. Well, even though it's Denak who leads the pole with the 145.8 was your pole lap time here, he does not have 3 purple sectors. Far from it. It was actually Guy in the V8 Vantage. 0.2 of a second faster than Denak in Sector 1, 37.3 to a 37.5. The mid-engines are really sing when you can dance them under your foot in the mid-sector, and that's where those 2.10s get pulled back. But the final sector just squeaked it by just over 1/10 of a second, though. It's Chloe in the AMG, which will be, you know, where you could really use the power of that big V8 and just, you know, fire yourself down the hill and around. You've only got kind of 2 hairpins is Sector 3, and the Mercedes isn't too bad underfoot, but you do have to control the rotation that it's got.
Absolutely. And the front engines do have the advantage in that turn 1, 2, and the final 2 corners. If you're able to control the car and get a very oversteery setup, you can use that rotation to your advantage. But it does make the car a little bit harder to drive at a track like this. You have to be balancing it a little bit more on a knife's edge rather than getting that mid corner rotation from the engine placement. So it will be really interesting to see how these drivers handle it. We do have a nice mix of manufacturers at the top end of the grid, but it will certainly be a bit of ebb and flow. You talked about that 2/10 that Geek had on Denak in the first sector, but then Denak has that in the middle sector. That's where Dirty Air is really going to play its part coming through the race here. It won't be too significant, but it will still certainly play its part for any cars that are going to be overslipping those front tires, wearing them maybe a little bit more, or maybe just overheating them just that little bit extra. And that could be the difference maker come the race.
Also, the Ferrari, we know this is historically not good with aero wash. It really, really struggles as soon as you know, you have a car in front. Have gridded up finally. We'll have a look at some of the custom liveries that have been put up onto Simufur this season. We do allow custom liveries, and there's always you know, some great ones that appear on. Obviously, the front row has been locked out by the Tig Gang Racing, the 2 Ferraris, and the more you look at these cars, the more funnies that you find.
Yeah, absolutely. All different kinds of sponsors and a little bit of Easter eggs for the TIG gang, but I mean, certainly a strong performance from them. You talked about the Ferrari and yet having those aero wash issues. Well, they have nothing but clean air ahead. The only aero wash they're going to be getting is from each other, but it's going to be the Ferraris followed up by a Mercedes of Chloe OS, a resident iRacer transferring over to ACC. Quite a hard step, quite a hard challenge to try to step up to the plate and be competitive, but they're already showing that they do have what it takes. These these Ferraris are certainly going to be giving us a headache though, trying to discern which is which. No colored mirrors or anything to let us know. Certainly going to have a Hawkeye trying to catch which number is which.
Well, I'm gonna have to go down to Tig Gang Racing and put, you know, some different coloured LEDs on them so that maybe in the night we know what's going on. The 21 electing for a full carbon stealth look, maybe if we have a night racer, you never know, it might play into it. And you've got Geegs, the very satin satin metallic British Racing Green. The amount of times that British Racing Green has been on Aston Martin, if I had even 1 penny for it that I'd seen, you know, I would be a millionaire, I'm sure. Still, can't complain when it looks so good on the car. And it's good to see, though, that we've got so many, you know, team liveries as well. You know, you've got Blue E. It's all going to be, as he says, a little bit hard to decipher between sometimes, but it's always lovely when you see, you know, a full team representing the cars all the same.
Yeah, certainly, and at least they do have the colored mirrors, so we can take a look for those colored splitters, even just a little bit more to identify. We're gonna see the Aston, I think, the first of our non-team liveried cars. Oh, no, excuse me, sorry, we had the Stealth Mercedes, but it's gonna be the 59 of Czar, followed up by JPEG with the Porsche. The much needed 12 for them, as I remember we were fighting over who could get to that number, but they have it for the AM Championship, certainly going to be their good luck charm, and followed up by Slowbird with the Ocean Blue Jag. That's going to be very hard to miss, but certainly looking forward to what they can do with that Jag and Old Dog new tricks. The pace is there, it's just a matter of what they can do in the race. You see a Grim Lilf representative on the Porsche. The cars now roll away. We see the yellow McLaren of Bluey's Wolfen, and then the Aston Ruby, the BMW Merc, and everyone else rolling away. The safety car, yes, following up the grid. That's going to be a new addition that we have to talk about for the AM Championship this season. AM Championship proving to be kind of a little bit of a test bed for our future championships. The safety car, the big addition for this season.
Yes, the safety car, which can be brought in at any time for some of the maybe bigger incidents that will occur. Well, I say will occur, may occur. We'll go over that, ladies and gentlemen. But yeah, this time as well as live stewarding, which we had last AM Championship. For those of you who joined us there, we did have live stewards, and we still have those today. We now have race control. Our own FezzFox is very kindly taken upon himself to do race control, and Spitzer is driving that safety car. And we have, I saw them out in the practice session, had a bit of a test run, made sure everything works, everyone knew what they were doing, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we won't need a safety car, but you never know. As he says, some people might have said it would have been useful to have a safety car in almost the main season. But looking through some of the liveries that we didn't get to see before everyone fired up and rode away, we obviously have the Kvetch Motorsports. They still have their quite distinctive striped Academy cars, with the Mercedes and I think the BMW. We just see it in the background there. As he says, very colourful liveries of Fane. You have Ruby Kitsunes, which is kind of the interstellar purple McLaren. One that did not get seen in the main GT4 Championship, even though this livery was run. It's Race Ventura's car. Seffi's running this. But this livery and this car was what Grim Lilith ran in the GT4 season. It just never came to be for that car for some reason, and it's Jinvolf in the other Kvetch Motorsports car. Obviously Sarah in that very striking sort of black, white and red Aston Martin. I'm quite a fan of that livery, I must say. Neo is the sister car to the Interstellars, this time though in the BMW, as everyone starts to go too wide. That's another, I believe that's one of the Tig Gang racing cars. Snowdog all the way at the back, still with the it's very typical livery of the green, purple and blacks, and then you have Astro Black rounding out the field in the standard liveried the Lamborghini. But as we go too wide, it's going to be Denak, the leaders off. It's going to have the advantage into turn one, but is the Mercedes going to have enough grunt off the start line? Everyone's going to be sat waiting for that green light now. It's a test of your reaction times. If you get it fumbled wrong, you can very much be under attack into turn one. We've seen it as the green flag drops, and away we go. A bit of a slow start from Chloe. As look at the Aston Martin, the launch there. Randomly almost caught napping.
Oh yes, that Aston Martin typically getting bad starts, but absolutely nailed it from Geek. It's going to be Chloe looking up the inside of one. It's going to transfer to the outside line in two, but it doesn't matter as they've won the line. It's going to be Jasper trying to follow in, get a nose in on Czar, and it's going to be the Astons and front engine weapons are going to be taking up, and it looks like Geek might have been going around. Yes, Geek on the inside of the corner. Everything's going to be filing through on the outside. Not too sure if there was contact there. They're able to get it rolling without any pileup. Good avoidance skills on everyone through there. And it's going to be Neil looking to defend up into turn 4 here. No, nothing going to be coming at them. Oh, no, in the 16, taking a look on the outside of 4. Oh, and they're going to leave themselves open to the Lamborghini. Might be getting up on the inside of 5. Wolfen just trying to file in through here. Keep your nose clean. It's the start of the race, guys. You don't need to do anything drastic. 1 hour to go and 1 hour to race. You have all the time in the world to sort this out.
Well, we've had a yellow flag. That is the number 2. I think that they're still where they were, and the 999 have both ended up a local yellow flag. A couple of drive-throughs right off the start, which can only be from track position at the start. ACC will assign you a penalty automatically if you are outside of your grid position at the start when you grid up, and that's sort of naturally where those 2 penalties would have come from. But we'll see eventually if some of our stewards start to come through what they think of the turn 1 madness. But other than that, realistically, quite a clean start. Normally we can see, you know, some madness at Hungaroring with 4 to 5 wide coming into turn 1. But looking at the start, Danak has just completely pieced out with the fastest lap already, and Random is now on the back foot, having to fight their way back up.
Yeah, but you say 4 to 5 wide. Random is down 4 spots from P2 to P6. And we talked about how the Ferrari was the one to quickly get the tires going. We saw that in qualifying. Well, Random is going to be trying to use that advantage. Going around the outside of 2 on the McLaren of Jasper. Going to get the clear line through, but you got to get yourself open through 3 here. If you take too much curb, you can kill your run going into 4. No, plenty of space left, and it's going to be randomly moving up to that P5 position. The recovery starts now, and the clock is ticking because Danak is surely going to be using every advantage they can get right now to run away from the field. So Randomly needs to get on it if he wants to try to chase down Danak for that P1.
Yeah, and as the grid sort of files back in the background, Wolfen looking up the inside of Pablo, fellow McLaren on McLaren, and that kind of makes it a little bit harder when you're in these sort of trains. You know, matched machinery, 3 McLarens all battling one another. You don't have anything, you know, over your opponent. You can't be later on the brakes. You don't have more power. You don't have more handling than your opponent. You know, it's just down to the setup and how comfortable you are in the car. So Wolfen has it, like you said. You upset yourself over the top of the hills and you're just paying for it all the way through, almost open themselves up there to HemiHusky in the background as they're still 2 wide in front. The 2 McLarens go side by side with the Jag. Slowbird under attack. Is it going to open the door for Wolfen as well? He's going to think about it, look up the inside, and the Jag relents.
Sam Wolfen actually almost taking 2 positions here, coming to 14, going around the outside, maybe a little bit of contact. Slowbird's going to be looking to get back through. Can Wolfen keep a nose in it? You have that run now, so you got to try to get that momentum, but no, looks like there was a lift, so Slurbird's going to be running away here, and Wolfen's going to be eyes rear. There's going to be a McLaren hot on the tail, and it could be a dive here from Ruby deep into turn 1. Can they keep it tight? Yes, they park it on the apex. Wolfen goes wide to keep that momentum, but no, Ruby's able to keep it on the apex, and now it's going to be opened up for Sarah. Sarah trying to go around the outside of 2. 2 is going to be, yes, clearing for Wolfen. It's a little bit of carnage going back in the back of the pack, but it looks like everyone's able to sort it out cleanly. Sarah able to take advantage of that massive dive from Ruby and well held from that far back to get that car stopped on the apex and keep the momentum even to get that run to turn 2.
Yeah, I definitely thought that McLaren was not making that apex there, and now Wolfen on the back foot ended up losing 2 positions. Sarah read the traffic, fired the Aston Martin up and took very much liberties with the corners, but that is what you can do in a front engine car, firing it over massive bounces from the 604, but keeping it on the road. Now looks to the back of Ruby, but has caught up a little bit too fast, has to take avoiding action, and this is going to reopen it back up for Wolfen. He's going to be on the outside, swings it round, and then you end up in the inside for the run down the hill. Wolfen takes back P11 and now has to once again keep eyes forward. It's when you have a moment like this, you can't let it, you know, get to you. You've got to just think, yep, that happened, and keep your focus.
Absolutely. We talked about, too, one little mistake in those S's, and you're just going to be losing time. Wolfen, very smart to be able to recognize that Sarah had a moment, as Astro's going to be taking a look on the inside of Neo here, or sorry, not Neo, Jinful, and going to be sent around the outside of 14. Jin's going to be able to hold that on the inside, but the run is not going to be very good. Astro with the advantage, that Lamborghini really pulling up on the BMW, and it's going to be side by side into 1 That bright, high visibility BMW, unfortunately going to be high drag as that the Lamborghini is going to be shooting on past into turn 1. That's +1 position for Astro, eyes forward towards Seffi next.
Yeah, Seffi's had a little bit of an issues here and there, some bumps and bangs, but they're still going on in that Race Ventura car. That's the one thing that the Race Ventura always has been, and you always see with Seffi Racing, you know, always sort of keeping it on the track, keeping it clean, and really hasn't lost out to Sarah. That Aston Martin, even though, you know, they've managed to be getting by people, they haven't lost out yet.
And no, they haven't lost out at all. I mean, this mid-pack is going to be very tight. And it looks like Ruby also is able to sneak past Sarah and is now hot on the tail of Wolfen. And this could get really spicy because now we're going to see 2 cars for the first time going to it toe-to-toe. There's no advantage. There's no ebb and flow as we talked about before with the Aston Martin and the Ferrari. This is going to be mono-e-mono. As we see Seffi maybe looking for a move on Sarah. No, the inside's never going to be working there. And Astro's going to be trying to take advantage of it. Oh, is he backing up? And now it's going to be Jinfulf taking advantage, trying to go into 12, going around the outside. Astro able to hold it tight. Jinfulf can't carry the momentum, and Seffi is under siege here. Going around the outside is Astro, unable to make it stick. The grip isn't out there. It is tight on the inside of that corner, and Seffi knows it. And all she has to do is hold that traction down on the Porsche. It's going to be a monster coming out, but this is where the Porsche struggles. That straightaway speed, and here we can see that Lambo is gaining, and it's gaining fast. There's not much Seffi can do here except dive on the brakes, try to carry that around the outside, hold the inside for 2, but Astra way too confident. They know that they had that one. They just need to park it. Yep, all that momentum's gone. Seffi falling in position, and now Astro going to be hunting down Sarah, who's been struggling a little bit with that Aston, and this could be another big move for Astro if they can get their nose in time.
Yeah, tried to get, you know, everything that they could with the Porsche, planting it on the apex, using the acceleration, but a little bit of a wobble there from the Lamborghini. It's going to be a Porsche acceleration. The 22 looks to the outside. It's a long way around. It looks not to, but this is the thing, though. We've seen what can happen when you know, these when people go for a move. Seffi only really needs to keep within earshot, and as soon as Astro might go for a move, which might be happening right now into the chicane, looks to it, but the 63 decides better off and backs out. You just need to be within earshot. You can lose so much time going too wide around this circuit, and we've already seen what can happen with Wolfen losing, you know, almost 3 positions just in one mistake.
Yes, absolutely. And we see that Lamborghini, we talked about dirty air, doesn't seem to be affected. Absolutely falling through the middle sector. Might get a little bit of a run going into turn 12 here. A little bit of a look. They think better of it. And it's going to be ruining the run for Sarah here. And maybe it's going to be a move around the outside. The momentum is had by Astro. Astro setting up moves a little bit deep. The marbles are going to be ruining the grip. And those tires are going to be struggling for a corner or 2 now. Need to get those cleaned off. Oh, Sarah's going to be a little bit wide now, and this could open up the door for Asher to stick a nose in, and it's going to be a drag race down into turn 1. This Lamborghini shown its strength on the straights, and I think, yes, it's going to be done well before the breaking into turn 1. Astra spiraling in front, and that's going to be another position done. Astra starting from the back, P20, by the way. They did not set a time in quali, all the ways up into P12, and we've only had 10 minutes of this race has elapsed.
Yeah, and a little bit further up the front, we've kind of got 2 packs going on. Pablo trying relentlessly to get by Fane up ahead. They've been side by side a couple of times now, and this is definitely a very much a different machinery. The Aston Martin and the McLaren, just every single time that they've looked for it, the door's just been closed. But you have to kind of keep this pressure up. If you keep this pressure, you know, keep filling your opponent's mirrors every single corner, you know, that's when you start to play these mental mind games, you know, where you can really show what sections of the track your car is brilliant at. And in the background as well, you know, I really don't envy Pablo for being here. You can't make too much of a big move, a mistake, or, you know, a misjudgment, because you've got that Jag right behind you, and the Jag in a straight line will completely munch you. And we've already seen you can't defend in a straight line. You just can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, we saw with Astro's attack on Seffi, and if you make the wrong move, make the wrong defense, Astro moving up yet another position as we speak of them. If you make the wrong move, you're going to be opening yourself up to the other members of the pack. And it looks like Slowbird's possibly going to be looking for a move. This Jag strong in the straights, but so is the McLaren. This is surely going to be building up that frustration. But like you said, pressure, that's all you need, especially with a lot of these drivers learning. If you just stick on their tail, they might overthink it just a little bit. That pressure can get to some of these newer drivers or less experienced drivers that try to do a little bit too much. They know that they're under attack. Maybe just push that braking 2-3 meters a little bit too deep. And that could open the door just that much to open it up. But we talked about that Ferrari at the front warming up its tires very early on. Chloe, last lap, had actually set the fastest lap of the race, and as yet again this lap closed the gap to Denak with a 1.2 second gap up at the front. That Mercedes starting to get its tires up, and that could be very interesting for the long stint of this race. We're 12 minutes in. We have that mandatory pit window. It's extending from the 40-minute to 20-minute mark of the race. You have to have a mandatory tire change, but right now it looks like Chloe's tires are in an amazing window, 2 tenths, and it's going to be Denak going for a little bit of defensive move as Chloe tries to take a look. And this is where the pressure starts to mount. This is where you have to decide as Chloe, are you going to just try to put pressure on, or are you going to try to get this move early and get a run for the rest of the race? Certainly in 47 minutes to go, you want to bide your time a little bit. But then if you sit behind here too long, especially at a track like Hungaroring, where you're going to be dealing with a lot of that dirty air in the middle sector, how much is it going to destroy your tires? It's a risk versus reward. What is the best? And that's where a lot of drivers here are going to make their own with their racecraft. It'll be really interesting to see how the long run of this battle plays out.
Yeah, and Denak must have had an issue in that S's, which is an area where it can very much, come undone with a mid-engine car. Just if you let it get away from you that little bit too much, any of the mid-engines will bite you, no matter how tame they appear to be. The front engines always will have a little bit of an advantage there, just because they're that little bit more tame with where the engine is. But it's closed right up. Chloe fired up in the 21, looking this way, looking that way. They know that if they're close enough in the mid-sector, that's where the Tig Gang racing car had the issues. If you keep pressuring them in the mid-sector, something might come of it. It seems to be where this chicane was, where it happened for the Tig Gang racing car, but this time nothing to be said.
Yeah, and that Mercedes, it's a very imposing car, as Pablo's going to be looking around the outside, a little bit of grass, but that's not going to make it happen. That's a risky move, and it really requires a compliant car if you're going to try to make that. Unfortunately, that door getting shut in Pablo's face. Fane able to hold on to that position, as Astro is going to be chasing down Slowbird now, firmly looking for a position firmly inside of the top 10, as they've just kind of stuck onto the coattails. But it's going to be a lot of forward progress from them, as watching that Jag struggle through the middle sector, and could be a little bit of a look around the outside here, but no overlap to be had. Astro just setting up the run, very patient here, and it's going to be an open gap. There's those mistakes that we were talking about, just the driver pushing a little bit too hard coming into the S's, and that time just snowballs away. I mean, watch how much time Slowbird lost, 2-3 car lengths and a position, as Pablo's going to be looking on the inside of Fane. Must have been a mistake going deep into the braking zone, and now the next target for Astro is going to be Fane. Fane possibly risking dropping out of the top 10 here, and Pablo's going to try to run away, trying to bridge that gap up to Jasper, but that 6.5 seconds going to be mighty large, as in the background the Lamborghini of Astro looking for a greedy look. And can it happen? No, they think better of it, just biding their time, nothing risky. Still have 45 minutes left to go, and Astro playing the smart, patient game here.
Yeah, and a bit further back, the one of the other battles that hasn't really come amiss. Snowdog looking up the inside. That is HemiHusky. Takes away the 13th position. Has to get the AMG settled though again, and the McLaren with the superior drive coming down into that is turn 2 and into 3. Stuck on the outside. You have the inside, but it's now a disadvantage because you just squeeze to the apex. You can't get the slingshot, and the 555 loses out. All this meanwhile as well is great news for Sefi up ahead, Just managed to kind of get away and have some, you know, little bit of clean air while these two battle it out. It's amazing how much time you can lose at battling. And looking back a little bit further up the field, Astro Black still working on the back of the Aston Martin, looking this way, looking that way. And I think we're going to get a piece of paper soon with some of the steward reports, as the 7 Geek already has a 5-second penalty.
Yeah, so those steward reports, we talked about the live stewarding coming in. These drivers, it's not going to be a case of back and forth, no appeals. Your penalty is what it is Astro is going to be sending it into the inside, and that position is his. To the inside of 13, just need to defend it all, and way too deep from Fane out in the marbles. Able to collect it though, it looked like from the track map, trying to get it back out, and it's going to be snow carving on the back of Ruby. Set that up as Ruby's going to be a little bit loose coming through turn 13. Snow looking for the inside, able to get it, a little bit of contact with Ruby, but looks like it was just a little bit of trading paint, nothing too bad. Snow just getting the run, and P13 down the straight as Wolfen looking for a look on the inside of Fane into 1, getting that line for 2, can direct where he wants to go. And you could just say there's a pack moving forward here. There's a group of people, Wolfen, Astro, Pablo, they're all moving forward. We have our group moving back, so maybe a little bit of a mix-up with setups. Some drivers running those qualifying setups, some drivers running the race, but 2 distinct groups that are moving up and down the pack right now.
Yeah, very much so. Wolfen managing to get up a little bit further up, some more points for the Blue E Racing team. Although we don't have a team's champ scoring this go around, apparently it's a little bit of a fun between each teams. They're keeping scores of where everyone would be. But yeah, there was a Mercedes-sized gap there between Snowdog and Ruby. Just it was a closing door, but sometimes you have to make these decisions when you're already hard on the brakes. And now Ruby's got to reset themselves up and continue on. But we've seen that car can have some pace. What might have happened, I'm wondering if they've pushed a little bit easy, or a little bit hard on the tyres at the start, and they might be fighting that as Snowdog goes off in the top, sort of the chicane area. Very hard in that, in the big, you know, hulking AMG to get it. But look at the run, you just have that one corner. It's kind of that final corner is the main point. If you set yourself up perfect there, you're gonna make it, as the 555 shows us how it's done. Easy peasy into the penultimate set of corners.
Yeah, it's kind of like Maggots and Beckett's, that section. Think going onto the hanger straight. You just mess up that final corner, that exit, you're just a sitting duck. There's nothing you can do. And granted, it's a bit shorter here at Hungaroring. It's just as important, especially with how tight this track is. So really got to see a lot of emphasis from drivers to get the best run they can. And it's going to be Snowdog and a Ruby line astern once again going into turn 1. I think this battle is going to be shared between these two for quite a while here, as it seems they've traded positions at least 2 or 3 times now, as Ruby's going to be chasing down, Snowdog's chasing down Seffi, and Porsche not seeming to like Hungaroring this week. Perhaps the temperatures, or maybe Seffi just not too comfortable with the combination this week, but Snowdog got his eyes forward and eyes to the rear, and a little bit of a sandwich for that P12 spot.
Yeah, and as some of the battles continue on, we did get confirmation. The 5-second was for a steward's report. Lap 8, cars 7 and 604. 5-second penalty to the number 7, causing a collision. Positions returned. Car 7 is unable to slow the car down enough for the corner, resulting in contact with a 604. That is why they've got that 5-second penalty. So that's the other thing in this racing. Even though it's very heated up, it's very, you know, there's a lot of packed battles going on here. Still have to keep your P's and Q's about it, as Randomy, 4th place, trying to now get back onto that podium spot is the Tiggan racing car. In fact, as the timing updates, they're not, they're 5th. They're trying to get the position back from JPEG, who took that position away in the Porsche. So the Porsche, at least one Porsche, loving Hungaroring today.
Yeah, it's to be expected though. The traction is really good coming out of the double hairpins, but you really need to maximize and push the car. So it does lend itself to a little bit of mistakes if you're not too comfortable with it, maybe not having gotten the amount of practice in that you wanted. Who knows what it could be, or could even just be a small setup issue. Tire pressures could just be that PSI off, and that could change the game with these cars, especially with the temperatures fluctuating around a little bit. not too hot, not too cold, as you said early on, but if maybe they were 3-4 degrees further out than you expected and you have to take a gamble with the pressures and maybe you're not too comfortable with it, that could be massive. Because it looks like snow's going to be taking a look onto the inside of Seffi, but nothing to come from it. Just playing a little bit of mind games early on, maybe trying to unsettle Seffi, get a free mistake to move past, but maybe not. Oh, a little bit of flashing. So the mind games are well and truly out. Snow definitely wants to get in her head and get that position. This is the battle for P11. They're just outside the top 10. Any incident could mean these drivers are in that top group of positions.
Yeah, very much so. The flash of the light is the very typical way to, you know, make a driver kind of look in the mirrors and you kind of get in their head. But the Race Ventura Porsche probably not even phased, not even looking in the mirrors. And Seffi just knows what lines they have to run. You have to be more concentrated on your car than what's going around you when you're a Porsche driver. While all this has happened, pit window has opened. It's a mandatory pit window, and I think, if I'm right in saying, it's a mandatory tyre change. So there's, you know, there's only realistically one setup. As Snow kind of looks for the setup coming down the hill. He's done it once, but the Porsche with the acceleration just does, you know, couldn't make it work in the Mercedes this go around. And Seffi knows you just have to park it on the apex. You're not going to take your big Mercedes all the way around the outside of my Porsche. And the few people who've blinked already, Pablo and Geeg, first two cars down the pit lane. So that'll be interesting to see where they eventually filter out. That is your leaders of the people who've pitted. We'll see what everyone else does. I think we're going to get a lot of late pitters here today.
Yeah, interesting choice by Pablo, in my opinion, to pit so early. It looked like he was already in clean air, so you can't say that he was trying to get out of the dirty air, maybe run some time trial times and get back in the pack once everything cycled through and just deal with the pain of older tires. Maybe just grain those tires a little bit. We talked about that being possible here at this track. If you're too aggressive on those fronts, you could really lose that front end grip. And with the McLaren trusting all that downforce, I could see how that might unsettle you coming through this middle sector and lose you a bucket load of time. But we'll see how that plays out. That could be the right call. Maybe there's an extraneous issue that caused it. But it's going to be randomly chasing down the Porsche of JPEG again. And I have to say, it must be very frustrating in that Ferrari because you just watch all that time fall away in the middle sector. But then you're able to gain everywhere else here. But that dirty air just punishing the front end of that Scuderia car. And you could just feel the mid-corner understeer coming in from randomly. And that there goes that run with the Porsche superior traction. Even though it's going to be slower in the straight, that time is already long gone. Oh, randomly's frustration certainly going to be building up, having qualified P2. Being down in this P5 position and getting held up by a JPEG here in P4.
Well, that's the problem. The closer that you get in this in the Ferrari to the Porsche, the closer you get, the worse it get. You know, the worse the dirty air becomes. Almost the worse your car starts to handle. The Ferrari is not one for, or not a car that I've ever known to have the greatest front end feel. No matter what you can do to setups, it still feels a little bit vague as randomly looks to the outside, a kick of the dirt almost. Really trying to push past that car now. As he says though, just the Porsche's acceleration, you stab the throttle in the Porsche and that's it, it's gone. Whereas the Ferrari takes at least a little bit to get going. It's more of a one of the speedier cars, I would say, than a you know, an outright acceleration car. But there's had a great mid-sector as randomly might just be able to make this pass, you know, on the start-finish straight. You've got to stay close to your to the Porsche in the mid-sector. It's where it's strongest. If you can set yourself up being on their bumper, coming onto the start-finish straight, then you have an idea. But look what's happened. All that time, once again, it's starting to eke out as the Porsche can just have those runs out the corner.
Yeah, I mean, look at that. We saw randomly was basically pushing JPEG through the corners as we see Chloe coming in. The first of our lead drivers to blink might see the rest of our drivers reacting. But Randy was pushing that Porsche through the S's. Half a second that they lost by the time that they came through. His JPEG is now going to be coming in. The surprise is I would have expected Randomly to get into that clean air. But JPEG maybe burning up those tires a little bit, needing to come in. 34 minutes, we're about that halfway point of the race. So we're going to be seeing a lot of drivers coming in. Unless people are feeling good on those tires, I wouldn't expect them to be holding out. It's going to be Snow Dog looking for another move around the outside of Seffi here, but it's just not going to happen. The outside of these corners just don't have that grip as Seffi's a little bit deep. Snow looking for the cut back, and it's going to be looking up the inside, but Seffi, the traction of that Porsche, able to keep it in. Maybe Snow set up the line, that outside to in. He's going to be setting up quite nicely, getting good traction. The Porsche barely getting the run. This could be it. This is what Snow was looking for. And that Porsche, that top end is struggling as the Mercedes just hauls that big torquey 6.0-liter V8 hauling down into turn 1. Hard on the brakes, but the Porsche very strong, trying to hold it around the outside, keeping the momentum as Seffi is going down into turn 2. The inside line now to Porsche, but the Mercedes, the grunt of that big V8 engine, is going to just pull it clear. Snow giving a little bit of space on the inside, but clearing Seffi up 1 position, and that's got to be a big sigh of relief for Snow, as he had been held up for quite a while by Seffi.
Well, now it becomes a lot easier as the leading car. A Porsche driver, they are the happiest when there's nobody, you know, to dictate their corner speeds. You can really maximize your car. You know that you already don't have the straight line speed, so you need to make everything up in the corners. When you've got someone right ahead of you, like now you can see the Porsche is all over, but you can't take the same speed that you once would have done through the chicane. Now it becomes even harder. You almost have to wait for a mistake, but Seffi not dropping off the back of Snow. It's got to keep the mirrors of that Mercedes filled. You see what every time we have a little bit of a straight though, it's just the AMG just roaring away.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talked about that engine and that machine, but also the high drag nature of the Porsche. It's got a lot of downforce, but that extra downforce isn't helping through the middle sector there. We see the dirty air just pushing Seffi back, struggling with understeer. And it's a tricky one, especially for being on controller. You're going to burn up those fronts a little bit more. And this is just, oh, Seffi a little bit deep, going wide, missing their pit box, or missing their brake marker for the pit lane. And this could be an interesting way to shake it up, as it looks like Snow is going to be rolling into the pit lane alone. Seffi, maybe planned, maybe not, but this could shake things up a little bit if Seffi's able to get a move on, maybe overcut Snow back into the pits. You see Telephones now sneaking back in, JPEG going by on their fresh tires. It's going to be 2 minutes to that halfway mark, about 1 minute to halfway once Denet crosses the line here in a bit. But oh my, this is where things start to spice up a little bit. We're seeing, you know, 4 markers of drivers who have completed their pit stop. Chloe being the lead driver of that group. 5-6 seconds ahead is going to be Seffi, but surely going to be coming into pit by the time that they catch them. This is what Chloe needed, though. Chloe needed that clean air. We could see on the timing tables that they were starting to fall off a little bit, likely from sitting behind Denek for so long. So got to claw that time back, but Denek not reacting, which is interesting. Is Chloe was surely stronger in that clean air, but was really getting pushed back by the dirty air kicked up by that Ferrari. I would definitely see this as a big risk, letting Chloe run for so long without covering this off.
Well, that's also what I'm thinking as well about the other Tig Gang racing car, the 73 of Randomy. Obviously, it was all over the back of JPEG. You know, with just the Ferrari being hurt by the dirty air, not being able to get by. JPEG Fox dives in, but it might be a bit of an issue, as now you can see JPEG, the 12, has to deal with traffic. That is Sarah. That's the 604 Aston Martin up ahead. He has to get by them. You know, it is for a position, even though they haven't pitted, they are entitled to defend it. This is the problem now. You're starting to lose lap times, whereas Randomy is still gaining them, and this could have been a battle that is won or lost in the pit lane. It really just depends who's had the better lap times, as the 12 still looking either way, this way, that way, and the 604 pulls off, decides that they're going to take their pit lane, and JPEG is now released to set his lap times once again.
Absolutely, and it's all about finding that gap in the traffic, which can be tricky if you're on your own. Finding that gap to slot into, as we're going to see Seffi now coming in through the pits, making it into the pit lane. Hopefully that hot lap making up for a little bit of lost time for that pit lane kind of scuffle. Sarah, yes, coming into the pits as well, followed by Denak. So this is where the race begins. Chloe has had probably, 3-4 laps now. We saw that's about how long it took for that Mercedes to get its tires fired up. Early on in the race, lap 5 and 6 belonged to Chloe for the fastest lap. coming through the chicane here. That it's going to be a big gap. This is half the track that still needs to be covered. 30 seconds mandatory stop because it does take 30 seconds to change the tires. So that is a lot of time that needs to be covered as well as the longest pit lane of Hungaroring, as it does span the entire pit straight. Now, Chloe does have the time, and Denak will be sweating bullets watching that track map, seeing how close that they're going to get. And Geeg, oh, a little bit of grass in the braking zone for Geeg. Cars coming out of the pits here, and these are going to be for position. Geeg surely going to know that one of the first drivers on these tires needs to get these positions done now before the tires of their opponents get fired up. Denak coming out of the pits with a big lead. You think Chloe maybe a little bit conservative on the pits? That's a massive gap from what was going out before. I mean, it was only a couple of seconds, but that's a whole entire pit straight.
Yeah, a massive change in the deltas between both those drivers. As we've had one of the cars rejoining, there are Snowdog's trying to fight himself through Pablo. But looking at the pit times, Denak had a 1:14.4. That is his time from pit in to pit out, as Sefi is now looking on the outside of Pablo as well, trying to fire that Porsche around. But Chloe had a 1:20.8. Big time loss in the pit lane. So Denak has now once again got some breathing room. The time that we thought might have been lost by letting the Mercedes run free for so long, but doesn't matter because it has sort of bled off in the pit stops. And there's another penalty out for the 73. That is the fellow Tig Ganger racing car. So we'll have to wait until the steward's report comes through on that. It's not looking great for the fellow Ferrari.
Yeah, and it's not just one penalty. That was 2 5-second penalties. So that just came in. Oh, no, it was just one 10-second penalty. It was car 73 causing a collision with car 16. That would have been Firebrand. So Firebrand actually was one of the lower marked cars. So possibly a little bit of lap traffic. Randomly getting a little bit impatient and now having to pay the price. And that time that could have been gained by randomly staying out in that clean air, I mean, surely going to be lost now. And even if they can regain that time, they're going to have to retake that position from JPEG. And they're going to be stuck in the same position that they once were not a couple laps ago.
Yeah, and they will have to serve it during their pit stop because they have already, or they haven't come down pit lane yet. If you'd have come down pit lane, you would have it would just be added on to the end of your race time. But because they haven't come down pit lane yet, they're going to have to spend an extra 10 seconds sat in the box. As that's Sefi off in the background.
Yes, looked like maybe a little bit of contact going into the wall as well. I believe that was Firebrand and the other Ferrari. Yes, Firebrand. So a little bit of contact between the two. Maybe Sefi trying to send it around the outside of 4. I'm not quite sure what happened as we weren't able to get a full view of it. But certainly contact between the two of those cars. They wouldn't have both gone around like that in unison without. But Pablo shifting forward is going to be trying to chase down Snowdog as our leader of the race. Not the net lead. I'll remind you that is Denak. But Czar going to be coming in for his pit stop. And 6 minutes left. When is Randomly going to be coming in? And you need to be crossed that pit entry line by the time the pit window closes. You have 5 minutes left. It's a 1:40 lap time here. So you probably have 2 more times that you're going to pass the pit entry that you can come in. So when is Randomly going to bring it in? Not just how good are your tires to last here, but you're now starting to catch some of the lap traffic and you need to find a gap. This could be a little bit poor if he catches that 89 up ahead. And we saw how bad that Ferrari was in the dirty air. Certainly need to avoid that to try to maximize their positions.
Yeah, exactly so. So we'll have to see what the Tig Gang Racing car has in store for us. While some of the battles settle themselves out, what happened to the 22? This is a race replay going through. The camera cuts off, but I think it's, as you mentioned, a bit of lap traffic. I think that was the Ferrari slow, to let people by, but ended up just catching out the 22 Race Ventura car, and they kind of had nowhere to go coming around the corner. Be interested to see once again what the stewards make of this, but poor Firebrand in the 16 Ferrari is just getting beaten around all over the place.
Yeah, really unfortunate for Seffi too. I mean, that's part of GT racing though. You have the varying levels of experience, and unfortunately, it looked like Seffi might have just been caught out by the speed of Firebrand. Whether they're either letting people by or just maybe Seffi had a good run through there, wasn't expecting Firebrand at the speed that they were, but randomly leading the pack here. Are they going to be coming into the pits? Surely. No, it's going to be another time around. So next time around, it's got to be the last time that they're really going to have a good chance. Otherwise, they're going to risk getting too close to that pit window. And they have, yeah, we'll have 10 seconds or so, 15 seconds. I mean, if there's a spin or something, that could cost them. But Astro Black, also the other driver that has not pit. Hey, remember, they came from 21st on the grid, up in P2, probably around net P7, I would reckon, once you take into account the time loss for this pit lane. And Denak here is our net leader. Actually following through, who is that? The Porsche of Seffi that we just mentioned. So this is going to be Denak's time to shine, get it up to Seffi as those blue flags certainly going to be shown, get them out of the way. Denak is in a world of his own right now, especially with that little mishap with Chloe in the pits.
Yeah, very much so. And now looking back, one of the cars that's been on a bit of a a bit of a lead up, but is now finding themselves under fire. Snowdog made all those positions up, basically keeping the nose clean and just keeping out of the battles that Pablo and Geeg ended up in the wars as they still fight. The 64 runs wide and the 007 swoops up the inside. Position gained. The McLaren not really seeming to like that, sort of off-cambered long uphill right-hander as Pablo's now got to fight to get that position back. But yeah, Snowdog made up all those positions just outside the top 10, but he might have to keep his eyes on the mirror. It's 22 minutes until the race end. 22 minutes that you've got to fight now with these two drivers who are trying to make a recovery mission, but obviously will very much want to get by Snowdog.
Yeah, and Snowdog, I mean, we've seen Snow's not afraid to fight. Snow's rather feisty today, maybe akin to the fact that he was very unhappy with the track and how it was handling, as we see randomly coming in for his pit stop, and Astro electing to go one more lap. It's going to be cutting it awfully tight. Like I said, you only need to cross that pit entry line by the time the pit window closes. The Geek hot on the tail of Snow, and it's going to be the same engine between these two. The Aston and the Mercedes both hauling down the straight, and you can see completely even with that draft that Geek is going to be getting off the rear wing of Snowdog's Mercedes. Nothing to be gained. Maybe a little bit more downforce, that extra click of wing, making it a little bit harder, but Snow's got the advantage. He has the ball in hand as Fane is up ahead, and no, Jasper with damage on the front end of the car. What happened there?
Oh, we just caught the tail end of it on our replay, but that's the car's been unsettled. We caught the McLaren already sideways coming out of, that's turn 3, and that's what can happen if you unsettle the car, and Jasper having to wait to let the people by. You can see the 223's just sat there waiting. You've got to try and reverse it. There goes one of the fellow team members, and there you go. Finally they can get that car turned around, but heavy damage for the Blue E McLaren there.
Yeah, and we talked about that curb in the inside of 3 in qualifying. I'd be almost confident to set money that was what happened, as they took too much of that inside curb, just lifted that rear, and it's going to be the safety car coming out. Spitzer's going to be coming out with the safety car. 20 minutes to go. We're going to have our first safety car of the season, the first appearance of our safety car as a whole. So all these drivers are going to be getting lined up. We're going to be trying to pick up the leader, who is actually going to be Astro right now, but they're going to have to come pit. So likely we're going to be picking up Denak, and it's going to be Denak, Chloe, Czar, Randomy, and JPEG are going to be your top 5, and it's like it's going to be Jasper trying to come in for some repairs, as front of that McLaren was not very happy. Ooh, a little bit feisty coming into the pit lane. Astro trying to maximize time. Jasper just trying to survive. Two completely different ideologies right now. But here's your leader. Here's who's going to get picked up by the safety car. Looks like we're going to have the 999 safety car is going to be in the chicane, I believe, judging by the track map. So quite a ways to go for Denak to get picked up. There will be waiver rounds that come by here, as none of these cars are the leader. But we're waiting to just get everyone grouped up before we get that going. As Denak is going to be pushing a train of five or so lap cars. As many of these guys are going to be taking a deep breath. That's going to be a sigh of relief for them, as they aren't going to have to get knocked off of the lead lap, and they're going to be able to go back around, get back onto the tail of the field, and maybe a 15-minute sprint race to the end here.
And it's going to be very interesting now as well. One, because we've seen what what Chloe can do with that AMG. And Denak's been managed to pull out both times, but can the AMG, once it's right up underneath the rear wing of the leader, can they finally do something to get by in the dying moments of this race? And also, where's that going to put Astro Black? He's kind of picked what we thought was the oddest time to pit, has picked almost the best time to pit, as now everyone's slowed down for the safety car. There might be a few positions less, that they've had to battle through. So I'm really curious to see where the 63 ends up actually shuffling out on. They've dropped off the jacks and out of the pit they go, as Sefi comes back in as well. And I believe the 22 is now fixing damage, as they've already done their mandatory pit, taking advantage of the safety car section, because you can still pit underneath it. So well, to see what waits, but this is going to be a very, very interesting end to this race. As you can see, the blue dot on the track map, that's the safety car. That is the BMW M2 safety car that we picked this season, driven by Spitzer, and it's soon going to be Denak who's going to find the way up to the back of that car.
Yep, and it looks like the wave rounds are just getting started as they realize they had the field held up. Denak's going to be getting picked up by the safety car, strolling through the inside of turn 2 here. So only about a corner and a bit to go for Denak to get picked up and the rest of the field to run on by. But yeah, I think Astro's accurate on that timing page. I think they came out in P3, that safety car, a massive advantage for them, as everyone would have driven off of racing pace. No, as they would have been obliged to do. They aren't supposed to be running full race pace until they're trying to get around and are waved by the safety car. So that's massive for Astro, waiting till the last second, and that's going to be, they were what, P8 before this pit phase, and they shuffled all the ways up to P3 and have the newest tires on track. This could be massive for them in the last 15 minutes of this race.
Yeah, a very good strategical call there from the 63, so it's going to be, as you says, I think around about maybe a 15-minute sprint to the line, really, as we look from on board on the Tig Gang racing car. As a driver now, you're really going to have to be, worried and thinking about what is going to be your strategy as Denak's weaving and brake riding. That's the other thing now, in the safety car period, you have to keep the tyres warm. You cannot let them drop off to stone dead cold, because that will just completely ruin your pace. And it's going to be this car here, the 21 of Chloe. And as he says, transitioning from iRacing to ACC, it's a big leap, as you know yourself, but doing very, very well for their essentially first race out, starting to line up in the safety car. And now they'll be able to see, for the first time in a long time on this race, apart from the time where they were briefly close together, they can see the Tig Gang racing car once again.
Yeah, the safety car is a great equalizer. I mean, we had the mistake from Chloe during the pit phase. I'd have to assume a missed box by chance, resetting from there. But right back on the rear, and it's going to be 15 minutes and go. They're just going to have to get past the 2 lap cars that it looked like those in between Chloe and Denak. And from there, it's just going to be no holds barred. And that Mercedes, though, we talked about keeping those tires up to temperature. Very, very important for this Mercedes, because remember, it was not very good about getting those tires fired up. This Ferrari can be a little bit more tame, as it was able to get its tire temperatures in pretty quickly, able to fire and go. But we see Denak is actually the one that is warming the tires, as opposed to Chloe in the back, just keeping it a little bit more calm, a little bit more tame. But those tire pressures, those tire temperatures are going to be bleeding out of the tires. Especially going around here, 90 kph is going to be the pace car speed, and that's going to be absolutely crawling for any of these race cars here, and the tires are going to be crying that they are not getting the heat into them, and that's going to be a big moment for a lot of these drivers to adapt to. They had grip this entire race. They just spent 45 minutes at peak grip. But now they're going to come in and they're going to have very, very cold tires. So who can adapt the quickest is going to be the biggest benefactor of this safety car. And we could see in the middle sector, very grip limited sector, maybe a couple mistakes from people not adapting for that lack of grip, and maybe we might see a couple position changes in places we normally wouldn't.
Yeah, very much so, and also the heat cycles. Not only do you lose the grip, but when you heat cycle these Pirellis, you don't really regain the same levels of grip that you once did. You know, if you let them cool off entirely. We've had it a few times where I've done races with limited tyre sets, so you have to use the same tyres. Coming down the pits, letting them cool off once and heating them back up, it is a noticeable grip drop. You know, you cannot push the same as you could once on the same set of tyres you just came in on. You have to adapt to it. And I'm looking at the background as well. As much as, you know, there's a few lapped cars between the leader Denak and Chloe, Astro is right there on Chloe. For Denak, he wants Astro to, you know, to still be fired up and to go for those positions, because if they two start fighting, really then will be, you know, will be able to bring the Tig Gang racing car home, so long as they don't have that mistake. We saw, you know, early on in the race, Denak lost like, I think 1.2 seconds to the car behind, and you know, that was just a mistake in the mid-sector. You've got to keep it clean, you've got to keep it on the road, and there you go, the safety car pulls back in.
And it pulls back in, but Denak has absolutely shot out like a rocket, wasting no time trying to get the jump on the rest of the field, and it looks like it's worked a treat, as Chloe's going to be miles back. Nothing that they can do, weren't able to get the pack bunched up, but honestly a very good move from Denak, because the pack wasn't fully settled. Take the gaps while you can, and Chloe now has to fight through the lap traffic here. Sarah the first to move in that Aston, and it looks like Astro's going to be trying to follow suit. Yeah, maybe not able to get the overlap, no, so Asher's going to be held back a little bit. Also needs to get those tires up to temperature, as we're going to see Slowbird and Wolfen exchange positions going into turn one. Slowbird a little bit conservative on the brakes there. Those cold tires from rolling around at low speed maybe hurting them a little bit more than Wolfen, as we see also the battle for P10, Snowdog, Geek, Pablo, all drivers who have held that position once, but now they're all fighting for that last position in the top 10. And now we see our other two drivers. These are the drivers that were at the front. Jasper and Sarah, while they were in lap traffic to everyone else, they have a battle of their own. P14, yeah. P15.
Jasper managing to come in, fix that damage, and, you know, a little bit less hurtful under the safety car region, and have brought themselves back out. They'll be fired up and fighting through as both the P2, P3 go through on the Kvetch Motorsports Academy car. And there you go, Chloe managing to just fend out, but Astro very, very close in the rearview mirror. In fact, everyone has now been bunched right back up with the safety car. There's going to be some great battles here. Just over 11 minutes left on the clock. It's only a handful more laps, and as a driver, you're starting to look at that clock and think, you know, calculate how many laps left have you got, and it's really starting to think, not a lot. I'm going to have to do something to get by this driver. And if you've done the same thing for the whole race, you're going to have to start thinking of something different.
Yeah, and I mentioned that traffic before. Look at the gap. 3.3 seconds between the two, P1 and P2. That's going to be a mighty big gap. And Asher has a decision to make here. Are you going to work together with Chloe and maybe delay your opportunities to take that P2 position and let them catch back up, or are you going to take the fight to the front? And you have those fresh tires, you have the rubber to attack, but are you going to take that right now, maybe lose a second or two by battling, and then try to drag that back? This is a very critical point of the race for Astro, and this is really going to show what kind of driver they are. Are they the slow, calculated driver just trying to make the best of the position that they're in, or are they that aggressive driver trying to always attack and push to the front?
Exactly, and we'll kind of see what kind of driver there are. In the meantime, we didn't catch it, but Snowdog's made up one more position in the 555. Now, not only just finishing the top 10, inside the top 10 has found themselves in P9, as we got a local yellow flag up ahead as well. The 16 has been involved in that. Like I said, maybe people not realizing the grip that they once had is now gone, because it is in this middle sector, which is very, very difficult on the tires. Slowbird still trying to work over Wolfen. You know, where the Jag shines, the McLaren is just far enough ahead for them to be out of the striking range, and then you really can't do much over the mountain.
Yeah, it's you say over the mountain, a little bit of
Any,
Bathurst vibes coming through.
anytime we go up a hill, I call it a mountain. It's like, where are you at Brands Hatch? We're at the top of the mountain or at the bottom of the mountain?
Yeah, but the middle sector here, much like the mountain at Bathurst, you just can't get a pass unless there's a significant mistake from the car ahead. Here again, once again, Astro just following through Chloe, so it looks like maybe biding their time, just trying to maximize the position they have. Remember, Astro pit just before or just after the safety car, so they haven't had the chance to get the energy into their tires. They haven't had the time to really get those core temperatures up and get the pressure up. So it'd be a struggle to push the tires too hard right now. Risk graining the tires, not having that core temp. Is Cefu going for a little bit of a move on Neo? Going into turn 2, they're going to have the inside line, but the momentum is going to go to Neo. Can shut that door, and Cefu going to have to wait one more lap to try to get the momentum back on that BMW. That straight line speed of the German machine heading off its fellow German, and Cefu, the frustration of this race has to be rising. They've shown flashes of good pace, but just so many little things that haven't gone their way and just keep knocking them down. Certainly not going to be happy with this result.
It's one of those races for the Race Ventura car where, you know, they showed what the Porsche can do. They just ended up getting tangled in some unfortunate incidents. It's going to be a little bit wide though for Neo in the BMW, and Cefu squeaks by on the outside, has been released once again from the clutches of the BMW. But you've got to now keep eyes forward and not have any of those mistakes, otherwise the BMW will be right back there to pounce. With 7 minutes left on the clock, every small mistake really starts hurting a lot more. Astro Black is still right on the back of Chloe. The last lap times for these two almost identical. 45.47 to a 45.49. You know, you couldn't really pull these two apart, I think, as well. Astro might be just biding their time, just waiting for that opportune moment, because, you know, if you spin your wheels now and you really hurt your tires too much now, you know, coming that final couple of minutes where it really matters, where you really have that one chance to go for it, you're not going to have the grip left anymore.
Important to note too, Chloe 0.3 faster on that lap, a little bit more than that. So the gap is coming down, and they just caught another 0.2 on Denak. So this gap is closing. We might see a last lap shootout, and that's where Astro's new tires might come in. Astro playing that long game, seeing Chloe is able to reel in Denak just that little bit more. So this could get really spicy in the last lap or two. So we see Geek taking a look on the inside of Fane. Fane just trying to hang on to the fringes of the top 10, able to hold on to it through turn 2. Careful about going too wide and able to hold it tight, and gonna be another lap for Geek without an opportunity to pass, as that middle sector is just gonna push that Aston Martin back. And the front tires are certainly, they would be crying. They're going to be quite fresh with that safety car period. So Geek, I'll be just giving that little bit more steering, that little bit more throttle, just pushing it a little bit harder. That's where we might see a mistake, either from Fane or Geek, and that could be massive in terms of the drivers falling. That could be a free position for them, or we could even see things get mixed up again in a completely different order, and that's positions just outside of the top 10.
Well, if you remember as well, the 007 was the first car to pit, so they're running around on the oldest tyres almost of this entire field, and that is really going to be hurting that Aston Martin. Still showing what it can do though, getting the run set up. It's Aston on Aston, you don't have any more acceleration, that is just the better run that they've got. Fires it up the inside, and you have to bounce over the curb. A little bit of contact made between them and their fellow number 3 Aston Martin, but gives the position back again. But you can see he is really trying to push it.
Absolutely. I mean, you say he has the oldest tires on the grid right now, but you couldn't tell by looking at that battle just the amount of confidence he was able to carry through that middle sector with both dirty air and old tires. And it looked like he was just out of the pits and ready to go. And as we enter the final 5 minutes of this race, Slowbird's going to be chasing down Wolfen, the leading Blue E driver in that McLaren 720, on a track that I would have expected it to do very well at. And it looks like Wolfen has been quite happy in that McLaren, moving up the grid from their qualifying position up into that P7. Looks like this might be the maximum of what they're getting, but Slowbird is trying to knock them down down a peg. And that Jag is certainly going to be the match. And the McLaren as Geeg is going to be getting into the side of Fane into turn 4 around the outside. It's going to be a hard move to make it stick off the track. You're going to be losing a little bit of speed. Dirty tires now for 5, and it might be a little bit of time lost here. But Fane struggling equally as much as everyone else. But Silverberg back through the field going to be pushing Wolfen. That Jag seeming to be completely unaffected by the dirty air right under the rear wing. Looking up the inside, Wolfen electing to not go defensive, but a little bit deep, and Slowbird's going to have the run. Not enough to make a move into 13. It's going to be the straightaway to settle it. Who has the superior straight line? Who's trimmed this car out more? Who has taken that wing off the car? Well, they're certainly going to find out. It's going to come down to the exit, and the straight afterward is Slowbird's going to tuck up. McLaren with a better exit, but it looks like that Jag just able to equalize it, maybe pull back a little bit, but too far and too late. It's going to be another lap to go, but those laps are running out.
Yeah, the Jag does pull a little bit of, I think it's just over a tenth of that Jag can pull back, but that's with that distance that we just saw. If, you know, you get closer, the slipstream starts working a lot more. 63 still trying to work on Chloe as Astro Black fires it over the curbs. A little bit of a wobble there, though, from the Lamborghini. You can see what happens if you try follow a front-engine car's lines. They can do it. Your car might not necessarily like it just as much. A little bit of a wobble, and that gap sort of, you know, it really squeaks back out. Pablo going the long way around Jinfolf there, the outside line into turn 2 and swooping it round into 3. You've got to cover it off from the BMW. That car will have the you know, the grip coming with it because they managed to take that slightly better line, but Pablo has managed to hold on to it. P12 for the McLaren driver. It's not a million miles away, though, that Geeg is still fighting tooth and nail with this Aston Martin, and that might play into, you know, Pablo's race come the end of it. These two are losing monumental amounts of time to the people behind them.
Yeah, 3.5 seconds back to Pablo, but the amount of time that you lose while battling, especially at a track like Hungaroring, where you spend so much time side by side with a car that might be trying to fight you, that's going to be snowballing massively. When Fane has been struggling, so those opportunities are coming quite often, and if Geeg gets a really good move, that could be Pablo even sneaking in with the momentum to take both positions. But when we jump back in with Astro here and looking on the inside of turn 4 for Chloe, maybe a little bit of an oversteer moment. They weren't able to get that run out of turn 3, and Astro's going to be taking those new tires straight up to Denak, but might be too little too late. 3.9 seconds, you'd have to say. I mean, even in the most generous of circumstances, that's a very, very big gap to close.
Yeah, unless something happens to the Tig Gang Racing driver, he knows, does Denak now, that you just have to keep it calm, keep it clean to the end of the race, and you're going to be golden, really. But yeah, I saw the sparks fly from the splitter of the 21. I think just, you know, bounced it over the curb there. It unsettled the run that we've mentioned before, the run up to 4. Once you've lost it, this Lamborghini that does appear to be running a bit of a low drag setup can really capitalize on it. And it's once again same area. Geeg is looking all over the back of Fane. It does appear that Geeg's setup is much stronger in the first half. There's a Aston Martin sized gap, but there's contact, and the 007 spins around onto the infield.
No, clumsy contact from Geeg there, taking too shallow of a line with Fane. But also, something to note, Chloe has a drive-through. Chloe has picked up a drive-through on what I would have to assume is track limits. Maybe they went a little bit wide off of the curb on 3. We haven't seen anything posted yet, but that's going to be massive because that's going to go into a post-race penalty. That means Czar would very likely inherit this third-place podium position.
And speaking of Czar, he's under attack from the charging random. He's still trying to get sub positions up. A little bit of damage there on the front of the Tig Gang Racing Ferrari. So it's been in the wars as this car is the 73. Had to fight themselves back up. They might still, with that drive-through and the penalty applied, get a P4, which you say, you know, you can't really say is too bad of an effort. They've got basically this last lap to get around Czar. A little bit of a better run coming up to 4. Is Randomly going to look the inside? No, the Ferrari is not. Knows that the dirty air that he's going to wash over that car. It's really not going to aid them. They're going to have to wait for a moment where they can slingshot this Aston Martin rather than just, power through them in the corners.
Yeah, important to note too, randomly putting about half a car wider on entry than Zar, just trying to get a little bit of air on the nose of the car, but looks like too much curve is going to hurt their
Denak's
run.
got a drive-through. The 54, Denak, the TIG Gang racing car, has a drive-through. The leader of the race. This is massive.
That's going to be awful. That means Astro is going to be inheriting this lead.
The 63 that started dead last. Did not. What, did they qualify? I can't even remember what happened in qualifying. But he got. Danak tries diving in, but it's too late. You will still end up with a penalty, unfortunately. But the 63 Astro Black comes to the line to take what is essentially P1 in the round 1 of the AM Championship here at Hungaroring. You can see the penalties applied there. Chloe sneaks through as well because they didn't take the pit lane. They knew that the penalty was coming. May as well just serve it. So Tanak going from the leader of the race this entire way to P3. Zar hangs on to P4, but I think that with those two penalties, we might see the RK9 Motorsport car, a car we haven't talked about all race, at P2.
Not just the RK9 car, but randomly as well. So from one TIG Gang racing driver to the other, they're both going to get promoted up. And I think even JPEG might have stolen a spot too from Chloe and Denak. And that's a lot of time. Oh, we see a little bit of contact with Pablo trying to get back by on Fane. And that's going to, drop Pablo back behind several cars there in that trailing pack at fringes of the top 10. Fane falling down to P12, and that's the last thing you want. On the last lap, it's just survive, and just to lose all that hard work right at the end, certainly going to be frustrating, and can't harp on them for trying. That was definitely there, but it was definitely risky, and unfortunately it did not pay off.
So it might be one of those weeks where we have to say the results are here pending post-race penalties, and we have what it will be, ladies and gentlemen, your official results of the race. It is Astro Black in the 63 will take P1, win this race, and take home a big chunk of points for the round 1 of the AM season. Zar, the RK9 Motorsport 59 Aston Martin, takes home a surprise P2 after basically just running their race. We didn't really talk about Zar because he just wasn't involved in anything crazy. Did the 59. The 73, a great recovery drive, really, from Randomy. It's qualified P2, has been, in the wars, has had all of those issues, fought back up all the way to P3. JPEG, very, very close to the podium, though, in that Porsche, highest placed Porsche. Chloe comes in the top 5. Denak just outside it because of taking the pit lane in P6. Wolfen did hold off Slowbird just about on the line. It was very, very close. Snowdog comes inside the top 10. P9 for the 555 Mercedes driver. Geeg manages to get that 10th place, still fighting tooth and nail right to the end. Jinvolf cars year 11. Fane with that unfortunate contact with Pablo, 12th and 13th. Sarah is the 14th car. Jasper doing so well all race. Had the issues right towards the end of that car. Heavy damage puts them in 15th. And Race Ventura's Seffi, the Porsche that has been in the wars all day and struggled. Just wasn't a day for Race Ventura, but you know that they'll bounce back. They always seem to do. 43 of Ruby, another car. Both them and Neo finished together. Yeah, definitely a one where they're going to have to go away. But you can always take, from a race that goes bad, what you did or what happened to you. Sometimes you can't do anything about it. Sometimes it's, time for lessons to be learned. And finally, the last place car that finished was Telephones for the Kvetch Motorsports Academy car. That is the 19th. The ones below, I believe, they haven't seen the checkered flag.
Yeah, so certainly a race to take away some experiences from. It was AM Championship is going to be for getting a lot of these lesser experienced drivers some lap time or some track time under their belt, some racecraft against some other drivers, and really putting a spotlight on them. So you could say that this is definitely a race that they're going to have learned quite a bit Unfortunately for Denak, losing that P1 position, Chloe as well for P3. But that's just the way it is with racing. I mean, you have to take it all the ways home. You can't just get complacent and let things get away from you, because then immediately Murphy's Law is going to step in and take that away from you. And it's not over till it's over. And unfortunately for two of our drivers, found that home. Commiserations to those two, but of course, Czar and Randomy are going to take those two promotions on the chin and be very happy with just being able to put themselves in the right position to take those final two spots.
Yeah, very much so. It was a race where we had some great battles, some great action all the way through. And not even the last lap, last second dramas for both cars. Both were confirmed to be track limits by our stewards. The 21 and the 54, both track limits. And we did have it confirmed. Incidents are still being investigated after the race, so we will have to update you on some of the standings, what what they will be in the next weeks. But we really thank you for joining us here for round one of the Simufur AM Championship here from Hungaroring. We'll hope to see you next week, where instead of Hungary, we're jetting off all the way down to Spain, Catalonia, a track which some people really like. I know who I'm looking at in the staff channel who really loves that track, and some people really do not. It's going to be interesting to see what the drivers make of that and what they're going to have to do car-wise and changes to to prepare for that track. But from me, HemiHusky, from my co-commentator for the first time this one, Plasmaraider, Fez, who's the race controller, Spitzer, the safety car driver, Bolly, who's been our head steward, and all of the other stewards who have been, looking through all of the incidents this entire race. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we will hope to see you next time at Catalonia.